Welcome to the channel, guys. Bash here, and today I'm going to be showing you how I make my Spartan helmet using EVA foam and a minimalistic approach with my tools. Typically I start off with a template that I traced onto some cardstock. For this one's pretty beat up just because I've been using it for a pretty long time now. I'd say for about 3 years. I think I've made like 11 helmets out of this one, so it's pretty beat up. And you want something like cardstock or some cardboard or something a little bit more durable. So if it is a project that you plan on making a lot of, it's a little bit more durable. For my EVA foam, I'm using some puzzle mats. These are recycled from, I think, a kid's playroom or something like that. So they're a little bit more beat up, but that's fine. That'll work just fine. You can get some craft EVA foam from like a Michael's or Joann's or something like that, but puzzle mat foam, that'll work just fine. So I start by tracing the template with a ballpoint pen. You can use a Sharpie, but that'll give you really thick lines and can alter the way pieces are glued together if you're not careful on how you cut it out. You can also use a pencil, but the foam will just dry out pencils really quickly. It can dry out ballpoint pens as well, but you can make it work. It'll make a little bit more of an easier line to cut on as well. I'm also economical on how I trace the pattern, trying to fit as many pieces of the template on one side of the foam as well. I'm not just putting the template right in the middle of the foam and wasting all of that excess. You can get a pretty good amount of pieces if you do this. You can also use pins to help keep larger patterns on the foam instead of just trying to hold them in place with your hand like I'm doing here. But for smaller pieces, you can kind of get away with it. You'll also notice on some of these pieces, it looks like little mini triangles all over the sides. Those are called registration marks. That just helps you match up the pieces. So whenever you're gluing together like two curved edges in order to make like a dome shape, kind of like this one, you'll see here that I show you that you just take the pattern, flip it over, transfer the registration marks, and then when you cut it out and glue it together, that'll give you that nice dome shape. So if you're like me and you try to get some of your projects done while you're traveling, whether if it's work or personal travel, you don't always have the luxury of bringing a bunch of tools with you. So in this video, I'm just trying to narrow it down to only what you absolutely need to get a project done. And this is a pretty sizable Spartan helmet. I mean, it'll fit most people. So I haven't really had any troubles, making them for other people with this one template. So you can get away with a pretty big project when you're on the go with minimal tools. You'll see here with the face shield, or at least a little bit of a larger pattern, you might have to cut off those puzzle edge pieces and glue those two sides together. That way you have a pretty seamless transition. Otherwise you'll kind of have to split the template and glue that together later. It's just more to keep track of. This way it's a lot easier. Alright, so now for the cutting, I use an extendable box razor, and I just try to stay true to the template that I traced and keep them as organized as I possibly can. You see here for the face shield, I cut it at about a 45-degree angle, and that's because whenever you glue those two face shield angles together, that'll give you that nice crisp 90-degree angle whenever you glue those together. So that's how I get that point in the face shield. You'll also want to try to make sure you get some kind of self-healing mat or a table that you don't really care about. I was cutting on a table that I didn't care about, but even then it still dulled my blade pretty fast. You'll see here in the video, if I've got it lined up right with the timing, how those two 45-degree angles kind of meet together to make that nice crisp 90-degree angle in the face shield. Alright, so before you get to gluing, you have the option of curling your foam kind of like by hand like this. If you have a heat gun, that'll make this process way more easier. It'll also seal the foam up, so whenever you go to apply your paint or whatever other sealer that you have, it doesn't soak all of that moisture in. I didn't have that. Remember, this is kind of like minimal tools, so all I'm doing is just by hand really curling it up, trying to get a little bit more of a dome shape just to prepare it for gluing later. Alright, this is barge contact cement. The way this stuff works, you can see it comes in like this little tube. You can get big cans as well. But what you want to do is put a little bit on the sides that you want to glue, brush it smooth, try to get a nice thin coat on both sides that you want. Wait for it to dry and then mash it together once it's dry. You can tell it's dry if you use your finger and you kind of just tap it lightly. And once it's lost its tackiness, that's how you know it's ready to be glued. I'm also using, I think that's called an acid brush. So whatever brush that you're going to use this contact cement on or any kind of glue, naturally you're going to go through them pretty quick. So try to get some cheap brushes so you can glue them up and not have to worry about ruining your good brushes later. So you can see in here, I'm actually just matching up the sides, trying to push and pull the foam together. That's a really great advantage for working with EVA foam, is you can kind of just force the way that you want it to glue or shape, and it will hold. That contact cement is definitely going to hold much longer than the foam will. Once that contact cement is dry and you try to pull it apart, after it's cured, you're going to rip the foam before you rip the actual glue. It's also worth mentioning your first time with a project that you'll want to label everything in order to confuse or not confuse yourself. Like I said, I've made a lot of these Spartan helmets, but even still, I try to label some of the pieces in this video, and I kind of get confused on which one was the back half and the front half, but thankfully I transferred those templates on different colored pieces of foam, so that kind of helped me stay on track. You also want to glue up the pieces and try to get the surface that shows as flush as possible. So for those curved pieces, make sure you match up the registration marks so you get the right curvature on the helmet. If you have a heat gun to pre-shape it, like I said, that'll help a little bit, but in this video I just kind of had to muscle it in place. Don't worry if you don't get it perfectly flush. You can also sand it down later. Whenever you do get home back to your tools, you can use a Dremel. Otherwise, you just kind of have to use your fingers to try to mash it in place and get it flush, kind of like what I'm doing right here. When you have a piece like this, that's either the front of the helmet. Yeah, I think that's the front of the helmet, where you have a bunch of edges kind of meeting together. You want to make sure that you try to cover that with some other foam if you have a whole lot of seams, or like I said, just try to make it fit as best as possible. It'll save you a lot of cleanup in the end. Something that you can use to help stop the EVA foam from sticking together prematurely is if you get like just a sheet of paper, some parchment paper or wax paper or aluminum foil. You can stick that in between the edges that you don't want to stick together yet, especially if you're doing something like meeting the front and the back half of this dome for the Spartan helmet, and you accidentally get a stick somewhere where you don't want it. You don't have to peel it apart or try to cut it and re-glue it or anything like that. This is me just kind of forcing the shape in there and making sure all my edges are a little bit more flush and it has that dome shape. For the face shield, this can be a little bit tricky to glue in place. I think I skipped recording just the gluing piece, but I think you get the idea at this point. You want to try to match those edges up as perfectly as you possibly can. And you can see here where the straps of the faceplate kind of just extend out. That was the advantage of gluing up those puzzle mats a little bit earlier. And here I'm just making sure the faceplate is all glued up together. Alright, so for meeting the faceplate to the actual dome, this part can get a little tricky. You can see where I marked with a Sharpie on the inside and the outside where I guess you would say the bottom front of the dome piece would match up to the top edge of the eye holes and then overlap those face bands of the faceplate around the bottom edges of the dome. And then once it meets in the back, you can just cut off the excess of both ends. And once again, I'm just using contact cement to make sure those pieces are all perfectly matched. And so for right here, you can kind of see what I was talking about with those bands kind of just mushing together. Once you got it at about the right size, you can just kind of cut off the excess that you don't need. And this is a pretty important part too. Like if you think that you need a little bit bigger of a helmet, you can make those bands a little bit bigger, and then stretch that dome out a little bit more. Or if you have a smaller size person or a smaller size head, you can do the opposite, where you can wrap those bands around a little bit tighter, making that dome a little bit smaller. Alright, and once I have those two back pieces glued up, that pretty much completes the fabrication. Next is just all sealing. So with this one, I'll just take a little bit of the quick seal. I'll go around all those edges and all the places where the edges didn't really meet. And now I'm showing you some options for sealing the foam. This is Mod Podge. It's just a puzzle glue. You can get this from Michael's. There's Plasti Dip. That's a spray-on rubberized coating that you can use. There's plenty of stuff out there that you can seal EVA foam with. And then last is the paint. There's a ton of paint options out there. Just have fun and experiment. You know, every project I make, I have a plan in my head, some color set aside, but the end result usually looks nothing like what I planned. So if you want something quick and easy, a can of metallic silver or gold will do wonders. And if you're going for a real metallic look, you can, besides spray paint, you can do things like edge highlighting or recess shading and really sell that authentic worn or battle damaged look. And that's it for the Spartan helmet. It's really easy. It's a pretty fun project to get into. If you've never worked with EVA foam, this is a great introductory video, a great introductory product, and you can make it look like whatever else you want. There's plenty of templates and tutorials out there to make other projects like weapons and armor, but this is mine. This is the way I do it. And if you like the video, go ahead and give me a like. And other than that, thanks for checking it out.